Well, I'll give a brief introduction for Dr. Dan McKinnon here. He's an organizational development consultant and coach to family business owners and entrepreneurs. He's a registered psychologist who provides his clients with psychological counseling, coaching that focus on helping them. And helping them overcome conflict, improve communication, create a meaningful life, engage in mindfulness-based stress reduction practices, and discover their inner natures. Dan is a successful lifetime entrepreneur and has co-founded and managed 12 companies in his 6 industries during the past 40 years, which is an impressive paragraph in itself, Dan, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, well, you made me sound great, so thank you. Now I'm going to have a great day.
Oh, so I guess, getting into it here, I mean, a lot of small businesses are family businesses. Can you explain, are there any differences, or can you explain what the differences are?
A few, when you asked me that question, a few did come up, right? So I would say, first off, by definition, a small business is small.
Yeah.
And by definition, a family business is not necessarily small. Many family businesses, especially multi-generational ones, grow into very large privately held companies. Like, for instance, Leon's, Shaw Cable, Atco, ICO Industries. It's a multi-billion-dollar roofing manufacturing company that started right in Calgary. So by definition, to change there. Also, small businesses don't have to have a family member in them, right? Often small businesses have one founder and no family members. All family businesses have more than one family member. And with family businesses that are successful, it's usually second generation, sometimes third generation, and might even be fourth generation, like someone like Leon's or ICO, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the key difference between a family business and a small business is that in a family business, there is a great deal more relationship history and emotional history. So family business, because of those lifetime tangled up relationships, have to work with emotions in much more special ways, because emotions do arise. If you're in a family, you have emotions.
Oh, yeah.
So those are principal differences that came up.
And those are really big differences. And as you say, I mean, a lot of people talk about, or they come into a family business by default. But I mean, I guess how do you start a family business, or what discussions should you have before you start a family business?
That's another great question. Starting off, a family business starts off like any business, right? They start off with someone identifies an opportunity, right? Some family member identifies an opportunity, either out in the marketplace, they see some gap in where they're working and they think they can fill it on their own, having their own family business. And so that happens, and that member then, if they were going to involve other family members from the beginning, and they don't necessarily, then would go home, talk to their wife, right? Talk to their brothers and sisters if they want to involve them or not. But they would still, or not necessarily, but could easily start it and then bring family members in later. That's how we did it, right, with our company. The other thing that's central to forming a company, a small business or a family business or of any size, if you're going to do that work, you have to have a high tolerance for ambiguity, because when you're making a business, you don't know what's going on. You have to act as if it's already there and begin to make it happen as you do it. And you have to do it with unrelenting tenacity. You know that yourself, because you have your own family businesses. You cannot give up. You have to keep going. It's 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. But you do need a clear vision, and you do have to have passion. But then you lay it down one brick at a time. You act and adapt, and before you know it, you have something real. Hopefully you keep it profitable. Hopefully you build equity. Hopefully you don't take too much money out of it before it has money. So take less at first and more, and a bit more later, but don't take less unless there's more, right? And that's can be troublesome in any business, right?
No, absolutely. That's very, I mean, the reinvestment is very important in any company. That's for 100% for sure. I guess, should you have defined roles? I mean, and have contracts and titles. Have you ever, or would you recommend having someone outside, like a family mentor, chair meetings? Any specifics along those lines, Dan?
I would say that there should be defined roles, and those roles should be based upon individual strengths and capacities, right? So you want to be working where you're good at it, right? So you have to do that, and it should also be based upon interests, right? Otherwise, you're going to run out of energy for whatever your role or function is in the company. If you want to put titles on, you can put titles on them, but as long as you all know, who you are, what you're doing, and where you're going, then you're doing a good job. From there, though, the matching of those roles and goals and functions needs to be in some balanced fashion so that the company operates with efficiency, and it's fluid. And what it does is, when you have people working from their strengths all together, you create a situation where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You have a synergy, and that's what's important. And that's how I would begin, and when I set up a family business or a small business, and then always try to have those elements throughout the company, no matter what we call ourselves or what issues we come up with. You got to operate from where you are, right? So you want to meet anyone in your company, you want to meet them where they are and take them where they're going. And when you do that, you get the best out of everyone. So you make everything more.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a fan of titles myself either, and your points towards communication is just bang on. It's so important in a family business.
Yeah, totally agree.
And obviously, conflict is going to arise in a family business. So how does it? I guess a two-part question: how does conflict arise, and I guess what's the best way to solve this conflict when it arises? Because it can be touchy in a family business.
Great question and wonderful wisdom. Yes, it can be touchy in a family business, for sure. But it's not impossible to work through, right? It's not impossible to make your relationships better, actually, when you get into the family business and you expand the family in that sense. But where it can go wrong, or where conflict can arise, is in a few areas, at least that I've dealt with directly and that come up quite common when I'm talking with others, is during the succession planning. So when one generation is passing the business over, say, mother and father to son and daughter, there can be a mismatch of their values, right? So because they're from different generations, they don't live in the world in the same way. They don't operate in the world in the same way. And with that mismatch of values, then conflict can arise. Another thing that can happen if you're the second generation or the next generation of a family business, you've probably grown up in quite a successful family business. If it's run long enough that you're 25 years old now and they're passing the business to you, and there could be issues of entitlement, right? So like for sure, issues of entitlement. Absolutely. And somehow we have to get through that. And then there can be a delicate mismatch or imbalance of power, or maybe not so delicate, that somehow both generations have to work out, because the generations that's leaving has had all the power during the time, and now they have to figure out some way to share that power and be willing to give that up or transform it in a different way in service to the future of their next generation. And I would say another one is low emotional trust, right? So we all have an emotional bank account, and if we don't keep that emotional bank account fairly full and buoyant, then when the seas get rocky, we swallow water. And so the way to have a strong emotional bank account is whenever anyone makes a bid with another family member for attention or influence, that family member has to turn toward them respectfully. If they stare in their phone and don't attend to them, it's going to drip something out of the account. If they say, hey, wait a minute, I'm signing my name on this check, it's going to drop something out of the account. And so there's always has to be this respectful turning toward that happens within the business. And the other thing is, sometimes what happens is people ignore the 3 crucial R's of having a company or being in a business. And that's, you have to have rapport, and you have to maintain that. You have to have a great relationship, and you have to understand each other's resources, strengths, and apply them. So there's where it can go wrong. You want me to just roll right into
absolutely.
Absolutely. Try to make it right, or
right now, Dan.
Or get that ship on the emotional sea to shore.
Exactly.
Central to helping it go right and to resolving conflict is in each of us. We have to understand ourselves. And if we don't understand ourselves and have a good sense of our own development and maturity, if we haven't done the work, then we're going to be a risky partner. We have to know ourselves, be true to ourselves, and be vulnerable enough to admit when we can't match up to some things and trust the other family members. The other one is one of the most central things in all relationships, and definitely in family business, is that we need to have some emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, when in my translation, is you have to be aware of emotions, you have to regulate emotions, but most important, the bandwidth of emotional intelligence comes from empathy. You have to get others. If you don't have empathy, right, and if you can't build that empathy, you're not going to resolve the conflict, right? Third is we're all different. And so a person, if you want to resolve the conflict, has to be willing to accept other perspectives, dialogue through them, and be willing to make an effort to bridge them. Right. So, and if we all make an effort to bridge them, then we feel stronger in our relationship, and we trust each other more. Our emotional bank account's higher, right? And we resolve the conflict. Another central one is there's 5 conflict handling modes, and a person should know those, and without becoming lectury, right? I'll just say them quickly. But there are tests and exercises. Every person should know this in any relationship, not just a family business. We're going to choose, usually we operate from 1 or 2 of the styles. So some people may have a tendency to be competing. So they have concern for their own needs, but little concern for another person's needs. They're in a win-lose type mentality. If I'm like that, or you're like that, and I keep pushing that way, and you're not like that, we're going to have conflict. But if you understand what I'm like, and know that when my nature suits a certain situation or context, then you'll help empower me to use that pushing concern for my own needs nature, a safety issue, for instance, right? We want to get that done. Another one would be avoiding. So sometimes people avoid the conflict entirely. And so we need to know that about ourselves, if we're like that, or others. But avoiding is lose-lose. You don't get it done. Another one's accommodating, right? So you give in your own needs for the other, but you lose and the other wins. Another one is compromising. I give a bit, you give a bit. And the final and the best one in the right situation is collaborating, where it's a win-win and it's not a zero-sum game, right? And so if we understand that about each other, then we can, when a conflict arises, then we can communicate better. And finally, last thing I have to say, unless you ask me more questions, central to every relationship and to family business is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, his 5th habit. First seek to understand, then seek to be understood. And then you've got it, and the conflict will go away, and your family will be strong and resonant, and you'll be successful.
Oh, that's excellent. I'm sure we could talk all day on this, Dan. I mean, God, it's so important to, as you said, not to take anything personally, but to also listen before you speak. I mean, like the communication is, you shouldn't be constructing an answer in your head while the person's still talking. I mean, take your time, listen. And I mean, it is the backbone of all businesses, family, small, large, personal relationships, marriage.
Life.
It's like life in general. I mean,
Yeah.
this has been excellent. I know, I'm really happy that you're able to join me, and I really appreciate the time, you taking time out of your busy schedule to spend, 10, we went a little longer than usual, but I mean, when you're giving out advice like this, when you have a doctor on your, talking to a doctor, you got to listen.
Well, that's very flattering, but I'm just Dan. But thank you very much. And we went a little long, but hopefully it's valuable information. Thanks for having me.
And that's absolutely, and that's what it's here for. So I'd like to, again, thank you everybody for joining. Thank Dr. Dan McKinnon again. My name is Jade Alberts from Calgary, Alberta, and my passion is helping small businesses. So have a great day. We'll see you next week, and we'll talk soon.
Okay,
Take care.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.